Any of you like some water? No water. Okay. Hello, everybody. Hello, everyone. I don't think it's on yet. Is it on? Hello, can you hear me? Okay. Welcome, everyone. So our session today, as you know, is about creating our own African brands through innovation and entrepreneurship. So we have here 5 wonderful entrepreneurs from different parts of Africa. Before I get started on that, just some house rules. So the organizing team would like us to please silence our cell phones. Could we do that right away, please, so that that's done? And just to remind yourselves, please speak into the microphone because this has been recorded so we can all be audible and clear. And yes, please feel free to tweet and share your experiences on social media. That's very important to include people who couldn't be here with us. Okay, so we have here, how do I have you first on my list? But you said I shouldn't start with you, so okay, we'll start with Moses. So Moses Kanduri is co-founder of Alex Play, and it's a revolutionary mobile payment billing solution that integrates multiple telecommunications companies and the banking networks in Ghana. I'm going to ask Moses just to say a little bit about himself and your business and what brought you to this journey.
Wow. Thank you very much. I'm pleased to be here. She rightfully put, I co-run a payment platform in Ghana, which started somewhere 7 months ago. In 7 months, we have actually had about 35,000 subscribers and users daily. We've transferred over 500,000 Ghana cedis, translating into about $120,000. So it's for me, it's been a wonderful journey because it hasn't been my field in the tech or financial or fintech area. I started off as a major international relations back in New York, where I stayed for 11 years. And I got my job with the UN. I worked with the UN for 6 years as a head of resource mobilization, and then moved back to Ghana when there was need for a resource mobilization consultant for social protection activities. And I did this for the Ghana AIDS Commission for a year and a half and decided that, you know what, there's more to just raising funds for social intervention than just going to the society to solve certain needs. What was the need? The need for everyone to be financially included and to be included at a rate that you wouldn't feel the impact of the cost. Because these were communities that technically, I mean, even though financial services or mobile money had, escalated, and you are aware in West Africa, after Eastern Africa, they were still grasping with the simplicity of the technology because everyone was doing apps, data expensive, among others. And I thought that, you know what, none of the players in the market was doing a USSD service, which is just dial a short code and takes 2 or 3 steps for this woman to be able to pay. So I began to develop a USSD system and successfully developed it and implemented it, and it's been working very, very well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great. So I'm going to go to Zuena. Actually, it's Zuena. Yes. So Zuena Farah is the co-founder and managing partner of Crayola. It's a business development advisory co-creating custom solutions that deliver impact. And you've also created a flagship program, Bits and Bytes, Innovation and Technology Convention. So can you tell us a little bit about you and your journey coming here? But I'm also loving this word co-creating. Can you expand a little bit on that? Yeah.
Okay, so as a co-founder of Crayola is a business development advisory firm, and we work with both ends of business enterprises, startups and entrepreneurs, as well as corporate companies. Our focus mainly is with startups and entrepreneurs, and that led to the birth of the Bits and Bytes technology convention. On the co-creating side of things, we welcome startups and entrepreneurs that have ideas, and we work with them to provide a platform. Our expertise is basically on go-to-market strategy and then also brand vision and development. And so with the background that we have and the expertise, we work with these technology companies in how they can enter the market. We work in market intelligence and market research as well, and assist them in entering the market. We've worked with over 200 startups, and some of them have taken them from having no pitch deck to a pitch deck, and then earning funding from various enterprises or investors. And some of them that we are still partners with, and they have earned over 100,000 US dollars in just customer acquisition in terms of profitability as well.
Great, thank you. So now we come to the world of fashion. And I love your branding, Tula. So Tula, Cindy is a well-renowned South African fashion designer, a graduate of the National School of the Arts in Johannesburg, and his work has graced many runways, including Hong Kong, Beijing, New York, Lagos, Paris. So I hear that you're also very clear that your takeoff happened around the Emerging Designers Awards related to FEMA. So what brings you here?
Well, I'm Tula Cindy. Like you said, I'm a fashion designer based in South Africa. I'm South African. Fashion for me has always been not initially a passion, but it became a conduit for all the things I love. Because I went to an art school and I wanted to be a sculptor or a painter, but I thought fashion was so dynamic and was so practical, and it is something that everyone participates in, and it's a business I wanted to be in so badly. So immediately after that, I went into an actual design school, and my path has been very linear since then. You know, it's really been about creating a beautiful product, seizing opportunities. And for me, I love to do FEMA because it was the first time I went to Niger, and I went to different African countries to go and see what different designers are doing, how they've managed to create businesses out of their craft and out of their creativity. And it's really influenced the kind of designer I am now.
Yes.
And 10 years later, and I'm still doing it, I'm still learning a lot. It's a difficult industry, particularly on the continent, but it is growing exponentially, and it is one of those few industries that for it to grow, it needs more and more people to be involved in it. You know what I mean? Our technological advances don't remove the hand element of it and the labor element of it. So I think it's very important that there should be more African fashion brands just to alleviate unemployment, especially on the youth side, especially in South Africa. So I'm hoping to do more and more of that, and I'm happy to talk about that.
Wonderful. Thank you. Welcome. We're going to save you for last. Okay, so Ellie. So Ellie, won't you tell us a little bit more? I'm just going to read here that, please tell me if I'm saying your surname correctly. It's Ellie Shaningwa Ide Dimbwa Angula. Thank you. So Ellie is a chartered accountant, group managing director and co-founder of Leap Holdings Pty Limited and its subsidiaries. I'm keen to hear how many those are and what they do. So during 2015, Ellie was announced as Young Global Leader by the World Economic Forum, and she's the founding curator of the World Economic Forum Global Shapers Windhoek Hub, as well as the Archbishop Desmond Tutu Fellow and the Dangote Fellow. So we've been hearing about Dangote, and so you are living proof of contribution from his entrepreneurship. So tell us a little bit more about you and your journey here.
Thank you very much. I'm very honored to be here. I'm looking forward to sharing my story during the session. So, as introduced, I am Ali Angula. I run a consumer goods group of companies. We focus predominantly on the clothing sector and on the food business. And the way that we've organized our business is we've organized it into 3 operating companies. On the fashion side, we are a manufacturer, and we basically build everything around our brands. So we've launched Namibia's first retail brand called My Republic, and we've launched a protective wear brand and corporate wear brand called Trench. And on the food side, we grow vegetables on a commercial large scale in the northern part of Namibia, and we supply those wholesale into the market to the retailers that then supply those on to the consumers. And again, we do that through brands. We do it through our brand called My Republic. My Greens.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Ali. Now, finally, Adowa Beryl Ajiyekum. Thank you. So Beryl is she read civil engineering in college in Ghana, but because she always liked writing, she started a magazine called Echo, where the beginning was writing about the campus in Ghana and selling the magazine to students. And this has evolved into Ghana's biggest youth agency with a unique model where Echo has a team on every campus. I think you're in 25 campuses. Yeah. And you're looking to grow. Yeah. And these groups, basically these teams you have, they form focus groups for strategy building for brands. Yeah. And these are big global brands, including Vodafone. Yeah. So, please share your story.
So my name is Beryl Ajekum. In 2008, I was in college. I had always liked physics, so naturally I was going to read civil engineering, but I always had thoughts of myself as a writer. In Ghana, we don't have, if you're a writer in Ghana, you don't necessarily have a direct path in terms of what you're going to be doing. So I started this magazine. Initially, it was just sort of us having fun. But when I was finishing school, a group of students came and said they wanted to continue with it. So, I started to work in civil engineering, but I was still providing the commercial, business around the magazine. I think what had happened was then social media also came into Ghana. There was Facebook and all these things. And we were having a very strong hold on, the student campuses around Ghana. So there were all these campuses that were coming and saying, I want to have a Echo magazine in my campus and stuff like that. So we grew this very huge force of people. Then we started to do events because people were always waiting to see themselves in the magazine at events. And we had to wait for events. So we said, let's do an event. So we did an event. And I realized that the brands liked it because it became something that all the students were talking about. So brands started coming and saying, what you did, for this event, do for me, And now, we have grown into a company of about 80 people. We have 4 departments, and basically we have a very organic way of growing. So whenever something is happening, we will form a department for it and start to do it. And, and I think one of the very unique things is, like you said, we have these Echo campus teams. Across Ghana, we have almost about 3,000 people on our teams. And when you go to every campus, there's an actual, organization for my team. So we'll have like a general manager, he's a student, but he's a general manager. And, we have a sales manager, an events manager. And they grow into coming to work for the brands that we do stuff for, because the brand will have had experience with them for the years that they've been in school.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So please, with a round of applause, welcome our panel. Okay, so we thought we were going to start with literally looking at how it all began. So, Zuwain, I'm going to start with you and come this way. So, what was the inspiration or the aspiration that brought you the aha moment, if there was such a thing? Or, what was it actually that got you on this journey?
Well, it all started, I would say, in the living room, and then we had an idea, and
we being?
Me and my business partner.
Okay.
Adam, he's actually in the room.
Adam, where are you? Hello, Adam.
And it all started in the living room, and we were thinking of how people could have access to data, and not just data that they can make decisions out of, but just how somebody can go, a visitor or anybody that's outside Tanzania when they're in Tanzania, and how they can reach places or know more about Dar es Salaam or Tanzania. And we had an idea, we knew how to go about it, but the one thing that was lacking was resources. And as a typical startup, it took us 2 years to realize that resources is not just money, but it's also things like capacity, accounting, and whatnot. Both Adam and I come from very technical educational backgrounds. I'm more based on econometrics, and he's an engineer. And so when it comes to financials or building a business plan and whatnot, that was all
Outside.
it was outside the box. And so we reached out to family, friends, mentors, but all that was not readily available. And we thought, if this is the struggle that we're going through, what is everyone else out there going through? And that's where it started. And over the years, we've had partners and as well as companies that come to us and try to run innovation sprints and looking for the brightest minds and brightest talents. And we take them through a process, and it's not just about learning, but it's also equipping them with different skills and skill sets that actually can advance them. And even if they do not find the investors that they need there and then through those sprints, but they can actually find, they take back home some knowledge and are equipped with better pitch decks and better knowledge of what their product is and how they can actually market that product to investors outside who we present to them. And so, so that's where it started. We experienced the problem. We knew exactly what the source of the problem is, and we're trying our best to make it easy for other startups and other intelligent minds that are out there to actually access these platforms.
Great. So imagining that, obviously, in fact, not imagining, but knowing that this is a problem that's common throughout all the African countries generally. Most of our parents are not in business, so generational knowledge isn't transferable, as you explained. Have you got any thoughts about how we can spread this across Africa? I know that in certain countries that's there, but is there any, what are your plans in terms of growth? Are you thinking only of Tanzania, or are you thinking Pan-African?
We're thinking Pan-African. Actually, just earlier this month, we had the Bits and Bytes Tech Convention, and the focus was East Africa and not just Tanzania. And every year we have a theme. This year our theme was on agriculture, more on smallholder farmers. We had different areas such as renewable energies, asset tracking, and whatnot. And it involved applications from Rwanda, Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. And we're slowly expanding, and we hope at some point not for us to be physically in other countries, but to partner with the hubs. And that's typically what we did this time around, is that we actually partnered with hubs in Kenya, hubs in Rwanda and Uganda to actually source the best talent. Although the event was held in Dar es Salaam this year, but we're looking to actually expand across Africa. And speaking of expansion, Crayola has been instrumental in establishing a fintech hub in Tanzania called Ideate Space. And Ideate has adapted a model similar to Impact Hub, I think it's similar to Impact Hub. And with Ideate, the focus is financial inclusion in women. And I think the idea is that to tap into educational institutions and have these hubs and spaces within educational institutions. We think that the mindset does not change after you graduate, or it does not. You can change it, but we have to start building from the ground up. And the ground up to us is from either primary or secondary level education going forward.
Wonderful. Thank you, Zoena. So, Tula, talking about mindset and building from the ground up, for you, did you have fashion as a subject at school? Was it in your environment when you grew up? What was the trigger for you?
Well, I'm from a very creative family, so for me it wasn't really difficult going into the creative industries. Like I said, I went to an art school for high school. And immediately went into fashion school. So basically doing fashion was the equivalent of being a doctor in comparison to what I was studying before, which was literally fine art. So, and for me, I'm such a practical person that I went from college into working for other companies. I worked for a company called Vlisco. They make
I know Vlisco.
You know them,
yes.
yeah.
They were the first that brought African print
prints
into
and, yeah,
fashion and
Dutch company, but they're based in South Africa, well, that branch. And I worked there for about a year and a half, and I built their menswear and their women's wear departments, and it did extremely well.
When you say built, what do you mean
From
exactly?
scratch. They had none.
So say a little bit more.
So basically, I got employed on the premise that they wanted to show customers what could be done with the fabric. So it's a small showcase. So I was given a contract that I would get a portion of the profits because it was a non-existent department. So as savvy as I am, I was like, oh, are you sure? You know, I signed on the dotted line, and I knew exactly what I had to do. I had to create product from the raw materials that had been written off the books. So we're literally making garments from nothing.
Okay.
On the
From
paper.
waste.
From waste. You know, our only input being the labor.
Yes.
And
your creativity and
Yes.
imagination. Okay.
And then I'd also worked for several other designers doing pattern works and whatnot. So I invited 2 other guest designers to come and do capsule collections for the brand, knowing that they would attract their built-in market, and while saving on their fabric costs as well, you know, because we love saving. But immediately from a non-existent department to making a lot of money. And I was very young, I was 21. And of course, looking at the percentage, my salary ballooned and ballooned and ballooned. And as companies do, they included consultants after that. You know how it is. Once it's now too big a monster for this little one. And I basically gave them an ultimatum. I'm like, either these consultants leave or I leave. Being young is something else. You thought it would never be. They're like, no, you can leave. So I started my business literally from being fired. And then I had quite a bit of money because, you know, I had to get my severance and whatever. And, you know, you think, oh, you'd be snapped up quick. So it was like month 1, month 2, month 3, month 4, month 5. By the 9th month, like, I'd gone to job interviews. I was earning far too much previously. I had too little experience in terms of, because I'd worked there 11 months.
Picture.
Yes, but I was earning so much. So I was unemployable, you know. And I was always failing those isometric tests. I think I'm not a group player. I'm not a team player. So I started my business literally from just necessity. It was like, okay, no one's going to employ me. I've earned too much. I know too much. I'm too young. Everything is wrong but right. So I knew how I had to start a business because I'd worked for enough designers to see what I didn't like with what they were doing. So immediately what I did was to create distance between me and my customers, which is what a lot of young design entrepreneurs do not do. They have customers interacting with them. So when somebody sees that you're sewing a garment from your mother's garage, they try to negotiate you down. There's too much contact. So what you need to do is that you need to perfect creating the product in isolation, then put it in a fancy store. So I was working as a wholesaler, literally from my flat, you know, and I was sewing. I had one seamstress with me. We'd make beautiful collections, put them in really fancy stores on consignment. Consignment is the worst. But fortunately, my product has got such a broad appeal that we did the numbers. And the brand grew. And for 6 years, we were working literally as a wholesale company. So I got more and more employees. But it got to a point where with wholesale, you reach a ceiling. Where it's going to be a volumes business, and that's not what I want. I never want a mega factory. Even in the way that I work, is that each seamstress make a garment from start to finish. It's a little bit slower, but there's a lot of personal responsibility, and because of the cost of our raw materials and the cost of the garments, there's less waste, you know what I mean? So it's a different way of working. It's a little bit slower, but we have little to no damages. And I decided to go into having an online store. Which, I'd love to say it was such an incredible success, blah, 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 but it was not. Strangely enough, online, especially in South Africa, it helped us in the fact that we could see what people were looking at. People could window shop, but they still went into the stores to physically buy.
Yes.
So I was like, I had to change my mindset. I was like, okay, no, the online store is not going to make money as is, but it's going to be an educational tool. It's going to be the directive tool where people can buy the product. And I've also reached the ceiling in terms of wholesale, because with wholesale, and no offense to people who work with numbers, but numbers don't always tell the truth. You know, you can put 10 dresses inside a store, and then they all sell out. And of course, I get the report, and I'm like, yay, we have a success, let's make 10 more. What you don't get is the nuance of the information. If 1,000 people had to try on that dress and you eventually got rid of the 10, you were lucky. Don't make that stuff again, you know. And you didn't have the feedback where people say, oh, it's too short, it's too long, it's too this, it's too that. All I saw was that we put 10 things 5 days ago, now they're finished, let's make more. And I was getting more and more that kind of like not informed numbers. I said, I need information, I need data, I need the money, and I need the data. I need to have my own retail stores. And in South Africa, this is very difficult because this is the last barrier we have to access to markets. Is capital.
Can I stop you there for
Sorry,
a
I'm
moment?
so passionate.
No, it's perfect because you've touched on a very important issue about the challenges of being an entrepreneur. So please save that thought. We're going to come back to it a bit later. So Moses, you and telecoms and banking and money, please tell us a little bit more.
Let me say once upon a time. I mean, I'm one of those who never knew what I was getting into. After I didn't get a chance to finish college in Ghana because I was in a private college. It was Catholic University, and because as a kid, we were contributing to this Catholic University fund because they wanted to build a university. And at a point, I had a choice to go to either the seminary or to go to this Catholic University. Went to the seminary for a year. It wasn't my place. And then I went to Catholic University, and this boy, oh my God, I wanted to be a student leader. Then it was a fresh university with the Fanians, and because I wanted to be a student leader, I wanted to champion all these, developing the constitution. The Catholic Secretariat said, you know what, no girl visiting the boys' dormitory, no boys visiting the girls' dormitory. I'm like, man, this is a college, you can't do this. Then I began to be a bit radical, and at some point the university couldn't tolerate me anymore. So they had to let me go in my third year. And then that was actually the beginning of how I really reshaped my life. I went to the capital city, it was very chaotic. It was my first time going to the capital, Accra. I joined this, there was this sachet water that had just come out, pure water. And so I joined a company where I had to be a distributor. I sit behind a car, distribute. And this was just 12 years ago, I like to begin the story 12 years ago because I used to sell water and I didn't know what it was going to be like. 2 days, 3 days. Whether I would make money, I would be able to find a place to sleep. And I think luck. Sold water to a gentleman who, whose change, I decided to go give him the change in the traffic. And he said to me, you speak good English. Why are you on the street? I'm like, well, maybe I need to get I need an alternative school to go. He said, why? I'm like, well, this is what I did. So he gave me a card. And I never looked at the card. I only got home at night, looked at the card. It was the country director of the World Bank. And I called him up and he said, come to my office. I got to the office and he said, can you sit in this conference for a minute? It was a youth conference discussing agriculture. Well, I'm coming from a farming community, so at least I understand that I can hold a cutlass, I can do stuff. So that knowledge played, and I think for me that was the opener, that was the beginning of everything. Then I got to just stay there every day, to come in, sit at the public information desk, print out copies, photocopies, and then one day he said to me, I think you can implement a youth in action project. Can you develop for me an alternative project for labor? And so I was thinking around it and decided that prison labor in Ghana was underutilized. So
what do you mean prison labor?
Prison labor. So we have all these prisoners in our jails and our systems, and every morning you see all these prison officers escorting all these prisoners to somebody's farm, and at the end of the day, the owner of the farm just gives something to the prison officer. It doesn't trickle down to even the prisoner, right? And I said, you know what, we have government unused land. Maybe we use the prison labor farm, and then we sell this food to a national program, which we had a national school feeding program in Ghana, and then use that money to provide for them medicals, food, and I was sure that at least something could be saved in bank accounts that could be opened for the prisoners, and when they come out, whatever skills they learned could be used. And this project, fortunately, got the Youth in Action Project, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, invite me to my first trip into the U.S. in 2006.
Can I just ask on that, did you apply to them or did they find
I
you?
didn't apply.
Okay, what happened?
So the World Bank recommended, and
okay.
so I went to Washington, and in Washington I met the president of City College of New York, and she was on the panel, and after my presentation she said, "Do you want to come back and study based on your story?" I'm like, "Sure." He says, "But you have to start from scratch." I'm like, "No problem. Who doesn't want that?" So I went back to Ghana. In 2 weeks I found myself in the U.S. and. Again, that was another chapter of the story. In the U.S., I didn't know what I was going to do in school. So liberal arts studies, just in the classroom, what am I going to do? Nothing. But I ended up majoring in global studies because I wanted to work with the UN and I wanted to be in politics. I got a job.
So you can be finally a leader that you wanted to be.
So I got a job with the UN, the Ghana mission to the UN, as an intern, and a year later I was confirmed as a local staff in charge of protocol. 2 years later, I got a job as head of resource mobilization with UNDP in New York. And I used that to just build network. Everything about me today, it's network.
Yeah.
Because I knew someone who knew somebody who took me to the World Bank, So all I did was to build network. Because in resource mobilization, I had to meet all these multinational institutions. I had to meet, during the UN General Assembly, I had a chance to meet almost every African president. So I built network. And so at a point, when I went to Ghana, I said, maybe just do this resource mobilization for a living. Because the community needed it. We needed to do a domestic resource generation to be able to fund our social protection programs. But again, everyone was talking about financial inclusion, and you could only see it when you get to the roots of it, right? And one of my field work, I noticed that every woman in the market, had a phone, but when they finish selling, they have to still go and queue to put their money in some wallet before they move it to their wallet. And they could also move the money to just the same carrier. They couldn't move it across the carrier, right? And the person in the kiosk was having this phone. It was a big, Sony Ericsson, big one, and he has to punch all these codes. And I was like, you know what? Maybe there's some opportunity here, because I am into resource mobilization. I can use the mobile money integration platform to mobilize money for social organizations like UNHCR, like a number of them, because these NGOs need that resource. But they can only get that resource if we as Ghanaians or if we as Africans find the easiest way to remit or to give that money. And the opportunity was already with mobile money. All I needed to do was integrate it. So yes, I built this platform. It was hard in the beginning.
On that note of hard in the beginning, because that's our next round. So. Thank you so much. And I love what you said, because we spoke last night as well, and you mentioned the issue about when we were saying what are the two things that you took away from your journey, and it is being at the right place at the right time. So luck, in other words, that's how you put it. And also, what was the other thing you said?
So it was like
networking, to network. Great, thank you, Moses. So, Carol, how did it all begin for you? You've shared that story, and I love the idea that you were in an engineering field, but you followed your heart. So there was something in you about you that you thought, when I look inside, there's something there that's worth sharing, and it's brought you to a business journey, and all these people are impacted. So where to from here?
Okay, so I think the biggest thing for me, and I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned along the way, is the fact that whatever we thought of, even though it was very hard, was possible. So I remember that when we started, we were doing all these events. Vodafone reached out and said, "You are so strong on social media with your teams. Can you manage our social media?"
Oh.
We had never done anything our own strategy before. So I remember that we picked up the strategy of, we looked at previous strategies from other, brands. And then we sat in the office for like 4 days and we built this strategy for them. And again,
without them, on
without
your own.
them, yes.
So literally just creating from yourself.
Yes, all on our own. And I think we are a bit extra. We are always extra. So we made the strategy into a video, because usually people come and present it and and talk, but we made it into a video, and then we went to present to them, and they're like, okay, manage our social media. And because of that, so many other brands, KFC, a lot of banks in Ghana, also got us to come in and do the same thing for them.
And they haven't replicated it in other countries. They've kept it in Ghana. Or,
exactly. So that today, that's where we are. We are the place where, we have some people we've worked with in Liberia, in Nigeria, and then in Kenya, who want us to start up there. But there's one, ceiling that we're having, which is the fact that when you start to grow to this point, the big agencies notice you.
Want to come in.
And so, I mean, we're just talking about, this is my partner, Bright.
Hello. Hi, welcome.
We're having these conversations where the very big organizations, international agencies are making us really good offers. And we also want to be able to grow our local brand, to the world.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have the conversation of money, so we are in that space. But presently,
Can I just
that's
understand? So are you saying that these international organizations are offering you sort of to buy you?
Exactly.
And then you lose your brand, you lose your originality.
Yes, so you are part of them,
Yeah.
and then, so you I think what happens is that you are in a box, because you are going to continue to offer what you are offering presently,
But you bought.
Yes, but you're bought, but then there's also the other bit where you want to go as echo, into all these other places.
Yes.
And be, because we are, even though we are doing it as a business, we are extremely spontaneous.
Yeah.
And we think of something, and then in 2 days we've done it, and then everybody in Ghana is talking about it. So that's what we want to be able to do.
What an amazing quagmire you're in. Yeah. So Ali, can you tell us a bit about how you navigate this 3-sector strategy that you have, where you've innovated in these very fashion, agriculture, and remind me the other one again?
It's just the retail of those.
Retail of
yeah.
those two.
So it's basically the manufacturing base and then retailing those. So I was very fortunate before I started to have been a partner at KPMG. Okay. So I was a partner at KPMG Namibia.
Sorry, I shouldn't say that. Oh, okay.
So and basically had a very diversified portfolio of companies that I signed off of their audits. I had 3 or 4 big manufacturers. Our brewer, our milling company were all my clients that I signed off audits. So I understood the manufacturing business very, very, very well. So that is helpful in terms of the way that I then went out and set up Leap to ensure that even in sectors where we don't have the expertise, as we're building them up, I was using and reflecting back on how my clients had set up their business, and then use that to set up our business units. And each one of them are headed by an operation manager. So and under the operation manager, there's the different teams that basically run the different segments of that business.
Can I just ask you quickly? So these operations managers, how do you find them?
Oh,
is it easy?
Yeah, that's probably that is our biggest challenge. It's finding the skill to execute at the speed that you want to execute. And I think this is a challenge for any African business, any African brand that you're trying to build, and you have to actually build that skill. So it slows you down. It slows your access to capital, because if you can't demonstrate that you've got a team to actually build your vision and your dream, you can't convince that person to actually part with their money. So what we have, especially on the manufacturing side, is we've got a full training center that we run, which helps us in terms of building the low-level skill. And then the management skill we've had to actually bring into the country. Okay. So both our food business and our manufacturing business is run by people that we've brought in from Zim.
Okay. So from the continent?
From the continent, okay. Yes. Our head of our manufacturing plant has got 22 years in the garment manufacturing industry. Our head of our agricultural business has got 12 years, but we had to bring that skill in. It's not a skill that's readily available, because it's not things that we have moved in on a large scale as a country. So you're building everything up from the ground.
Scratch. Yeah. Great. I'm looking at the time, and because we'd love to serve our audience, I'm going to pause a little bit. I think we've got some pointers of where we want to go. But I'd love to invite any of you who may have questions to engage our panel. Okay. So we'll have, sir, what's your name, please? Tukila. Okay.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm Tukila. I'm from Namibia. I'd just like to ask, especially to Ali Angula and the gentleman from South Africa, when it comes to youth empowerment, for example, I think in building business and building brands, there's a problem of support from supporting one another and supporting our own very people. Because when Africans build a business or a brand, they just think about no, it's perhaps too expensive, it's too what, it's, and then they would rather support one from outside. What do you think is the best way to mitigate this issue in terms of making young people understand that in order to succeed, they need to support one another instead of calling it
competing?
Competing,
Yes.
basically.
Yeah. Thank you for your question. Tila?
Thanks for the question. It's very... Well, I have this argument quite often when people are like, black Africans don't support each other. I'm like, who does then? Because I look at my business, and I wouldn't have a business if it wasn't for particularly black South Africans. The issue is the challenges we face, and everything when it comes to our entrepreneurship is not the same as, in South African example, our white counterparts, where they have a safety net. When you open a business, it's do or die, you know? Whereas our other counterparts, perhaps their family has put up the money. If the venture does not work, it doesn't mean nobody's going to be eating for the week. So the stakes are very different. But at the same time, for people to be able to buy our merchandise, we need to make it easier for them. And that's where the access to market is always a challenge. And that's where market forces know that that's a way to block African brands from going to the next level. Because I look at my brand, and we've grown by being in shopping centers, because that's where South Africans spend money. But that is the most difficult place for a black entrepreneur to get a store.
How is that? Why is that, do you think?
Economically.
You need to afford the rents.
To afford the rentals. To even at a simple example, I have gone to CIFA,
What's
GTI,
CIFA, please?
South African, what is it? Small Enterprise Funding Agency. There's CEDA, DTI, all of those
So Small
agencies.
Enterprise Development Agency and the Industrial
Deplo-
Development Corporation.
Yes.
And they're all intended to support entrepreneurship.
Yes,
Okay.
but they struggle to grasp the fundamentals of what is wrong with the economy of South Africa and the intrinsic inequality that's in it, you know. So basically what they would suggest, like if I want to open a store in a shopping center that they have co-founded
Yes.
and co-funded,
Yes.
instead of them making the developers give a black entrepreneur a discounted rate or some sort of break, they would literally say, we'll give you money to give to them so you can be in the mall. But I'm like, not only have you co-founded and co-funded the actual building of the center, you have not put any kind of rules for these people to, they can exclude us if they want to, and then you will reward them financially
Yes.
for doing it.
Yeah. So is this a thought process you're having, or is this you now engaging with the
I've been-
IDCs and
I've
letting them
engaged
know?
with them for years about this, that
Yeah.
intrinsically our funding agencies
Yeah.
cannot be rewarding
Yeah.
those who exclude
Yeah.
the majority of the country
Yeah.
from economically participating.
Yeah.
They must be made.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They cannot get money out of the country whilst
Yeah.
excluding the majority.
Yeah. You know, you're raising an important issue, and I'm sorry to butt in here, but essentially what I'm reading from what you're saying is here are entrepreneurs, energetic, capable, willing, and they have a clear idea of their business model and their value chain. And then you have technocrats and officers that perhaps have other education, but there isn't that link of meeting of minds.
Absolutely.
And the policies that our institutions are driven on perhaps are failing us.
Completely out of sync. And
Yeah.
as the First Lady stated yesterday about the 3 C's, confidence, it is there.
In the entrepreneur, but not in the technocrat.
Yes. But in entrepreneurs, what's missing mostly, like I say, South Africa, is the capital element. You know, and
Okay.
for us to get access to market, for it to be easier for people to buy our product, because people will buy locally produced product if it is easier for them to get their hands on.
Okay.
You know, but we cannot make it more difficult for people to support what we do and also blame the customer at the same time.
Yeah.
The consumer is not nefarious.
Yes.
They buy what is there,
Yeah.
and we need to make it easier
Yeah.
for them.
Yeah. I think, though, to... sorry, what was your name again? Tukila. His point, in part, I think maybe rings a little bit true based on the conversation we had earlier this morning about that very end bit, about when do we stop to hate ourselves. I think where you were coming from, in part, correct me if I'm wrong, is perhaps where the technocrats don't believe in us enough to be willing to open their minds to what you're saying. So even though the customer and the consumer is open and keen and proud of you and your journey and what we do, perhaps the self-challenge thing is, you know, who are you to be thinking that you should be
Absolutely. Because I feel like the consumers is really, you look at music, you look at clothing, there's been, in the last 10 years, the African continent has exponentially embraced not only our music, our culture, our products, but when you look at our shopping centers, how they're dissected, you look at our banking system, how it's dissected. You look at
points of access.
We are not anti-African.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's the technocrats at the other end that are making it impossible for people to get to support.
Thank you, Tula, for that. Would you like to add, since he was asking you as well?
Yeah, so I mean, we've had really good support from the Namibian consumer. And I think as a brand, My Republic punches way above its weight. I go to events where the target market for My Republic is, and I would take 7 or 8 pictures in a room of about 60 people. Now, that is just phenomenal, right? And I'll send those pictures back to the team, and I'll say, look at this person, they're wearing My Republic. Yesterday, we had My Republic supporter also wearing My Republic here, which is, so we're very, very proud of the reach that the brand has had. So we certainly can't sit back as a brand and say that we haven't been supported. And I think maybe what makes it slightly difficult for My Republic in terms of the youth segment is where it's priced, because it's priced as a premium brand. But what I would like to really hammer on at the fear of not being an echo chamber is the fact that our economies are structured in such a way, especially for Namibia and South Africa, because they're very, very similar, where it is very, very difficult for black businesses to break into the old modes of what is the territory of white business. And in fact, they look at you and say, almost as though, what are you doing in our space, right? And the notion of this molds that are constructed in Namibia, they're constructed with pension fund money, which is based off, and our biggest pension fund is actually government employees, right? They are predominantly 99% black employees that are funding the construction of this mall infrastructure right around the country. And we are the first, if I look at the setup of the one mall where we are in, which is the biggest mall in the capital, we are the only retailer in there that is a full Namibian retailer. And again, to go in there, we had to submit a business plan, which they don't ask of a typical white business.
Are you sure of that, though? So just so we can balance.
I asked,
All right.
because one of their leasing agent is now left, and he started his own leasing agent. And we're moving into another shopping center on the food side, on our food business. And I said to him, why are you not asking me for the business plan for this one? But when you were there, you were asking me for a business plan when we wanted to open the My Republic store. And he says, no, it's not a normal requirement.
Okay.
It's not a normal requirement.
Yeah.
So we've got there's a different requirement for us to do business.
Yeah.
And it's the structure of how our economies are built up. And we can only change that narrative and that structure once there's a lot more of us. But ensuring that a lot more of us survive is the biggest challenge.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Next question. Okay, so we have 3 hands. I'm going to take the lady here in front, and then the gentleman at the back, and then we'll come to you. Okay. Oh, okay, can we take one more question? Because, we started late because of the other session, may I say. Can we just have another question at least?
We have another session starting at 20:30.
Okay, so that's now. I'm truly sorry, but can we please be available over lunchtime? Please bring your questions then. I hope you did get some value nonetheless. Okay. Right. Thank you. Okay. Pardon? It was shorter.
The next session starts at 11:40. In lecture 1, we have Not Too Young to Lead. Then here in lecture 2, we have Shaping an Inclusive Business Landscape. Then it's room D, not C. We have the LGBTIAQ plus identity. So you can choose, and it starts at 11:40. Thank you.